Should we bring in the closer?
I think it'd be a good time for that.
All right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 89 of the Free Baseball Podcast, presented by the Athletes Hub. As always, my name is Davis Bird, and I'm joined by Mr. Crumpler, the Crump Dog, looking like a scout from some sort of baseball movie about the Orioles. How's it going, big dog?
You know, just living life out here. It's a big week for the Orioles, so I had to don all the gear that I have, which is surprisingly more than I have for like any other team except for the Giants and A's. So I really decided to ball out. But yeah, it's been pretty quiet on the Crump front. What about you?
I'm going pretty great out here. We had the whole conversation earlier about you being out in the Waffle Houseless West. Not me.
Never
man.
seen one.
Your life sounds complicated, Jake. I can't imagine.
Well, what was that other thing? You don't have any Chili's near you.
Well, that's because I live in the middle of nowhere. That doesn't count. There's a Chili's in like an hour and a half away.
Oh man,
got to take a road trip to go to Chili's.
I go to Chili's like every day for lunch at work.
Well, what's life like in the fast lane, Jake? I can't imagine. I can imagine life, however, by making some bold predictions. Maybe some way too early predictions, just like we did last year with our 2022 predictions article. Talked about it on the podcast. We had a whole bunch of other writers and contributors for the Athletes Hub. I know Devin, who was the owner, helped us with it. Matt Partridge, who's been on the show, and Isaiah, who's been on the show. We had our predictions, all sorts of things about the last season of baseball. And I think it's a good time today to, one, go over that, see what we were right on, what we were wrong on, and make our predictions for the upcoming season. So how about you take us away and let's review our article from last year.
Sounds good. We will be doing 2024 predictions as well, but we used the same format that we did for the last one, which means we had the same questions. We'll run down them in the same order. The first question we have is, what was one team that missed the postseason? This is last year's version. So what's one team that missed the postseason in 22 that'll make it in 2023? I considered the White Sox the clear pick as they signed Andrew Benintendi. They got rid of Tony La Russa, and they just seemed really unlucky in 2022. And Davis Bird sort of said, you guys are all idiots. It's not going to be the White Sox, but it'll actually be their AL Central rival, the Minnesota Twins. And all of us were wrong about the White Sox, and Davis was right about the Twins.
I'm a genius. Never bet against the Twins, baby, except for me later when I'm going to talk about how I'm going to bet against the Twins.
Wow.
Yep. A little spoiler alert to later in the podcast. I felt good about the Twins, and it ended up being right but wrong at the same time. I was like, I think they're going to be driven by like their offense. I kind of was like, all right, they're signing a bunch of sluggers. They traded away Luis Arias. They're going to get Gallo. Buxton's going to play. It's like they're going to hit a cajillion home runs and they're just going to outpace everyone on offense. Not really. I mean, their pitching sort of carried them through the season. I mentioned the back end of their bullpen, and I mentioned them trading for Pablo Lopez. I don't think anyone really expected Pablo Lopez to be that good. I don't think anyone really expected like Joe Ryan and Sonny Gray to take major steps up. Like, yeah, the Twins just were good, just not what they were good, but it was not for what I said they were going to be good for. So I was kind of right, but wrong.
Yeah, that
White Sox.
I think whichever route you took to getting to being right shouldn't take away from the fact that you were right. But yeah, White Sox
victories
were so bad, and it's crazy that there was such a consensus that the White Sox would make the postseason, and then they were so bad. So, I think we'll have to take that into account when predicting 2024. But the next question on last year's article was, what's one team that made the postseason in 2022 that'll miss it in 2023? I said with the White Sox making it that the Guardians wouldn't make it, and that was right in the way that the Guardians didn't make it, but not at the not because the White Sox made it. And then you said the easiest answer was the Rays, but they did make it.
Yeah, I did not feel. I gotta be honest. I did not feel confident about that pick. I literally just chose them because like they just snuck in. It was like 86 win wild card team. Their biggest addition in that offseason was Zach Eflin. Turns out Zach Eflin's pretty good, but I sort of figured like
Well,
I
and
thought the
yeah,
rest
the winner.
would go. I figured that the rest of their division would get a lot better. Like the Yankees kind of added pretty big. The Blue Jays looked pretty solid. I was like, oh, okay, maybe the Rays will sort of be in it and then just not really make it, like just miss out right on the bubble. And I don't know. I didn't feel confident about that one. I just kind of threw it in there. I was wrong because I'm an idiot. But you know, we're 1 for 1. Well, we're 1 for 2 each right now.
Did you learn your lesson? Never count out the Rays.
Yeah. Yes and no. Yes and no.
Interesting.
I'll
Yeah,
find a way to do it later.
I feel like they always find a way. Like they know what they're doing so well. But the Guardians' choice just made a lot of sense. They're a pretty cheap team, and they sort of have these ebbs and flows. As they're very similar to the Brewers, where they just never spend a
Yeah,
lot
that's
of
a really
money, and
good
they're always
analogy.
just trying to toe that line of like just good enough or not super bad. And last year was one of those years where, you know, they didn't make a lot of additions. Like it's like they got Josh Bell and Mike Zunino, and that was it. And then it's like Shane Bieber was hurt and Tristan McKenzie was hurt, and that's like your whole team. So they're really just relying on a bullpen that was really good and some very good contact hitters, and it was never going to work. But we can move on to our predictions for the World Baseball Classic, which we won't have this year, but that was probably the peak of last offseason. Not even probably, definitely. I sort of went off the beaten path, and I went with Team Puerto Rico because they have a lot of very underrated players in terms of the WBC as a whole. You know, they're not one of the powerhouses, but I think they're in that second tier of World Baseball Classic teams. Unfortunately, they did not win it all, but Davis has once again shown that he is one of the biggest ball guy knowledge knowers in the world, as he just went with Japan, and he was right.
Yeah, I really liked Japan, specifically just because I mean all the guys that they have coming over are insane. I mean, you have kind of like you have your major league stalwarts everyone knew, like you Darvish, have Shohei. Obviously, those guys are great. Munetaka Murakami was a big part of their team. And Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Shota Imanaga now also huge parts of that team that
And
kind of got them over
Masataka
the line.
Yoshida.
Yeah, I had mentioned him there too.
Yep.
I was like, their lineup's really dangerous. You got Yoshida, Seiya. I don't even think
Yep.
Seiya took that much part in it. And then I had Murakami. So yeah, it was pretty cool. I was just like, I think everyone's gonna pick one of like Puerto Rico, the Dominican, or Team USA. I was like, I'm gonna go with Japan just to be different. Kind of got lucky on that one. But yeah, Team Japan. Shout out to them.
No, that was a fair pick. I think that would have been my second choice, but I wanted to go with like more of a bolder pick, which was wrong. So sometimes you can go with a bolder pick just to like be more right, in a way.
Gotta flex the ball
Yeah,
knowledge sometimes.
yeah. But it did not pay. It did not pay dividends with the results there. But we can move on to our predictions for last year's MVP. And in the American League, I felt it was pretty clear, and you were in agreement that Shohei was going to be the MVP, and he was. It's just like basically, as long as he stays healthy for at least 5 months, he deserves the award 100% of the time, and he did. And yeah, that will make sense. But on the National League side, it's much more interesting. I saw that there was sort of a glut of options, that there was nobody that really stood out. So I sort of went with a very bold pick, and I went with Jazz Chisholm Jr. Just on a rate basis, he was really good. And I felt like he was going up against candidates that were going to be competing with too many other stars on their teams to really stand out amongst their contemporaries. And Jazz did not really have anybody on his team that was super amazing going into last year. Arias obviously was incredible, but he stood out to me because on a rate basis, he was like one of the best players in baseball. So all he really had to do was stay healthy. Moving to center field maybe would help that and boost his WAR numbers. None of that happened. He was still very solid, but he barely ever played, so that did not play out. Who was your MVP prediction for the National League?
My NL MVP pick was also sort of like a different one that I figured, and it's mainly because I figured that the Mets were going to be a lot better, and they just kind of weren't. I went with Pete Alonso, and while he had a good season, like it's a guy that I feel like not enough people talk about in terms of being like a huge star of the game. The last like 3 seasons, he's been at like 37 home runs, 40 home runs, 46 home runs. I was like, I expect him, if the Mets offense is good and Lindor is kind of going off and Nemo's doing well and they're just sort of all firing like on all cylinders, I'm like, okay, Pete Alonso is going to hit a bunch of home runs. He's going to be in the national limelight. And then they're just going to give it to Pete Alonso. I like that you said it's like, okay, a bunch of these other like guys are, stars on their own team. Pete Alonso felt like he's not the only star on his team, but he kind of feels like the face of the Mets, if that makes sense to me. And it's very unfortunate because like the one guy that ended up winning did have guys competing with him on his own team. Like Ronald Acuna Jr. won it basically over Matt Olson and Mookie Betts. But yeah, I went with Pete Alonso just because I'm like, I couldn't pick anyone. I just genuinely could not figure out a guy who's like, I like him more than anyone else.
Yeah, and we were wrong, but hey, we got the right division. Both of us had it in the NL East, and it did stay there as Ronald Acuna Jr. took home the National League MVP award. On the pitching side for the Cy Young, I felt actually really good about my picks. I had Shane McClanahan in the American League and Max Fried in the National League. Neither of those guys were able to stay healthy. Shane McClanahan went under the knife, underwent Tommy John surgery. We'll miss all of this year. Max Fried really didn't pitch too much, even though he was pretty solid when he did pitch. But neither of those guys were really in the conversation. Well, I thought had some very interesting picks. I loved your American League pick of Luis Castillo. That was sort of my second option in the American League. I just felt McClanahan, I don't know, had that it factor there. And then in the National League, you went with a crazy one in Yu Darvish, and neither of those worked out.
No, they did not. I honestly, I know, spoiler alert to later, I literally contemplated again. I had to talk myself out of not picking Luis Castillo again because his numbers were so good. It's just like the AL Cy Young felt like, for the most part, nobody was either going to stay healthy long enough to win it or genuinely was just going to put up numbers decent enough to win it outside of like Garrett Cole. Yu Darvish had a lot of really good peripheral numbers. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be really weird here. And I'm going to pick someone who I think has like an outside chance. And I got the right team on the right side. I figured he would kind of continue his trend of being just really good. The previous season, he posted like a 3.10 ERA, like a 3.10 ERA, underlying numbers that matched, put up like 4 WAR through a lot of innings, didn't walk anybody, which is kind of a Yu Darvish thing that's, obviously plagued him for a large chunk of his career. I'm like, maybe he'll take like a step and he'll have like a renaissance year and just steal it, because there's also not really a super clear favorite in the NL at the time where it's like, I didn't really want to pick Burns because I'm not going to pick Brewer at the time because I'm not an idiot. It's like, I am an idiot, but I'm a homer, so it's a different kind of idiot. But I was like, but it's like, I'm gonna try to deal with Darvish for here, and I'm just, I'm gonna still support Bad News. That's my boy forever. Just wish he had a better season. Really mid last year.
I just put out a San Diego Padres sleepers and busts for fantasy baseball 2024. One of my sleepers was the one and only Yu Darvish.
The GOAT.
So I'm backing you up a little there.
Bad News is the coolest nickname a starter currently has. That's the GOAT.
That's true. So some of the funny picks for this award amongst our teammates. Devin picked Julio Urias for the National League.
Yeah, that guy sucked and is an asshole.
And Isaiah picked Alex Manoah in the American League.
We're killing it out here at these.
That's like the opposite of Cy Young. He literally chose the worst pitcher in the league, which is crazy. That's crazy. I'm a huge Alek Manoah fan, so it's like I feel bad for that.
That felt like a good pick at the time too. Nobody expected him to just be complete garbage.
That's such a funny pick. But we can move on to our American.
Another one was Nola, and he was pretty mid last year too. But
yeah, that's like a fine pick, and he didn't like become a guy that doesn't play for any team
Right.
now, or is like
A
just
guy that's
playing
getting
in rookie
shelved in the
ball.
complex league.
Yeah.
That's rough, man.
We can move on to our rookie of the year picks for last year. This is always a fun one because there's so much uncertainty here, where there is obviously with MVP and Cy Young. You're going off either a very small sample size or like minor league numbers, or in some cases Japanese league numbers, and those are very hard to transition over to what a guy will do in his first full taste of the major leagues. So this one's always one of the most interesting ones. I had Masataka Yoshida in the American League. I just felt, a veteran who was an all-star for many years in Japan, coming over to MLB and just, being solid enough to win the award. And then in the National League, I had Jordan Walker. He was one of the top prospects in baseball, and I didn't want to pick the like top guy, so I went with I think the guy who had like the third best odds. That did not work out. You had Logan O'Hoppe in the American League and Corbin Carroll in the National League. So first, tell me how it feels to be right.
I literally was just like, I can't pick against Corbin Carroll. Like, the only other option at the time genuinely was Jordan Walker. And we talked literally right before the podcast. I'm like, well, the rookie of the year race for like this year is so much more interesting than last year, because it felt like the guys at the top were like so obvious. It's like we're trying to outsmart the projections in ourselves. I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna pick a Cardinal. I'm not gonna go Jordan Walker. I'm just gonna go Corbin Carroll and just like be done with it. The Logan O'Hoppe pick stings because I think if he was able to play a full season, I think it would have been more of a conversation because his numbers were good and he would have played the full season, and numbers as a catcher look pretty good. If you're a relatively decent offensive catcher, I feel like he would have been in the conversation. Obviously, wouldn't have beat Gunnar, but he would have been in the conversation.
Yeah. And then I felt like you had a really good pick in the American League and it just didn't pan out because of health, but
yeah,
Logan O'Hoppe had a great start. Yeah,
I know. That's what sucks. Like I felt like I'm like, you know what? I think this one's a good one. I think this is a good one. And he posted good numbers before he even got hurt. He had like a 119 WRC plus, was relatively solid. He just wasn't walking very much. And then like he just got hurt, and it's like, man, that goes up in smoke. It sucks so bad.
Yeah. Well, I felt like your options were better than mine. Yoshida and Walker were both very solid, but like so far away from Henderson and Carroll.
Yoshida sucked too because he started so well, and it looked like it's like, all right, this pick looks really good, and then he just completely faded away. Like kind of down the stretch, it was just sort of not great. His second half was definitely not nearly as good as his first half. I liked the Yoshida pick at the time. I really did. I was like, I feel like in the AL, it's like you had the top two for me were like obviously Gunnar, and it's like Yoshida seems like he could be really good. I was like, I wanted to pick one that was not them, like those two. Yoshida just fell off. Like that sucked. Because Macho Man, that I like him a lot. I still do. Hopefully he can hang on somewhere, because I know there were still reports the Red Sox might try to move him.
Yep. And then the second to last section in last year's predictions was World Series predictions, who will make the World Series and who will win. I had the Braves versus the Mariners. Not only did the Braves not even make the NLCS, but the Mariners didn't even make the postseason. I had the Mariners winning it all with Luis Castillo winning World Series MVP. That did not work out at all. You had
Padres and Astros.
There you go. And who did you have winning?
I had the Padres winning. I also don't think they even made the playoffs.
Nice. They did not.
They did not. Yeah.
Not our strong suit.
Oh God, not great. I had them winning in 7. They didn't make playoffs at all. Great, pretty solid. I don't think anyone actually chose either team that made it. Obviously, no one chose Diamondbacks. I don't think anyone was remotely close to Rangers.
Yeah. And then the final section was our bold predictions for last year. And we actually had the same one. And it was that the Dodgers narrowly make it into the playoffs as wildcard teams. And we actually doubled down at the All-Star break, which was really funny because then they did make the playoffs. They sucked in the playoffs as per usual. But yeah, I thought it was pretty funny that both of us were on the same exact page and doubled down midway point, and the Dodgers still won the division.
Yeah. We got to do it though. We're never gonna not hate on the Dodgers on this
That's
podcast.
right.
Sorry, it's just gonna happen.
But that's not a bold prediction we can make this year after the offseason they just had.
That's true. To be fair, at the time when we made the article, they haven't added anyone, and we're just like, all right, everyone else in their division strengthened, and they just kind of didn't. So it's like maybe, and it just didn't happen. It's the Dodgers. They just kind of did the Dodgers thing, and they just didn't. They refused to be dog shit.
Well, I had an addition to that bold prediction, and that it was Kershaw has a renaissance season and maintains his health all year.
He didn't either. He didn't either of those things.
So,
He'll do it this year probably, since a year late.
Yeah, sure. I doubt it. Yeah. So those were last year's predictions, and now we can move on to the predictions for 2024. Now you know how good of guessers we are. Olympic level guessers. You're now probably excited to see some gold medalists go head to head and just guessing right now and see who's the best guesser. But it's going to be the same questions again, just like last year, just like the past couple of years. We'll start off as always with one team that missed the postseason in 2023 that'll make it in 2024. Davis, what's your choice?
One team that missed that's gonna make it
yes,
is your World Series prediction, one of them, and it's the Mariners. I think the Mariners have a good chance to make it. We've been kind of dogging them on the last few podcasts, but I think the additions that they've made make me so much more confident about how their lineup looks. I think their rotation looks really good. We might talk about that later, talk about Castillo. But I mean, their lineup top to bottom, prepared from the start of the offseason to now, to me, just looks really solid. I think J-Rod is going to look a lot more like his second half self than he did his first half self last year. I just really like the Mariners' chance. I wanted to go with them because I just really like that team. I like a lot of the guys there. I really want them to be good. I honestly think baseball's better when the Mariners are good. Like, that's just such a fun team and such a fun environment with a lot of really exciting players. I would really like to see the Mariners in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just wish they had added more this offseason rather than that sort of
I think so too. But the moves that they've made, like, I think they're solid. I think they're good enough to sneak in, and then I think that they're going to bank on a lot of steps up from a lot of players, and that's what I more or less kind of saw for me. So to me, I'm a big fan of how it looks. I obviously want to see them add more, and I think they still might. Might is like maybe like a 30% chance. It's not really like a super positive. I think they could. I just like the Mariners.
Yeah, that's fair. And I feel like there's lots of choices for this one. The Mariners were one of them. The AL Central is absolutely wide open, I think, for the Tigers or the Royals to really take a massive step forward. The AL East is always one that can shuffle around. NL Central might be the most wide open race of them all. Like, you could pick any team other than the Brewers there, and you could be right.
I mainly tried to not pick the Cubs because I'm like, it's so obvious for me. I'm like, I'm not going to pick the Cubs for this.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the Padres are sort of in that same position as the Mariners, where it's like they're due for a step forward, but they didn't really do enough this offseason. They subtracted more than the Mariners. And then the National League East, it's like the Mets are always predicted to make the playoffs, and they never do. So that's like an interesting one.
Yeah,
I think
the Mets again.
I would like to go NL Central, but it's such a crapshoot there that it's like, I don't know. I'm not going to be right there. So I'm going with one that is probably not going to sound too fun, but I'm going with the Yankees. They've never been under 500, like, since I've been alive. So there's no reason to bet against them, like saying that they're going to be bad, especially after they've made some additions this offseason. Just like better health next year with their star guys and with Cole atop the rotation, and now Strom in there as well, and adding Juan Soto. They literally don't have to be that much better than last year. And with the Blue Jays really not making the additions I thought they might, and then like they just have to be one of three wildcard teams. I think the Yankees sneak in as a wildcard team, though I don't think they're going to win that division with juggernauts like the Rays and the Orioles there. But I do think the Yankees will make the postseason in 24.
Yeah, that was one that I kind of wrestled with too. And I was like, I'm spoiling what I'm saying later. I was like, I made some of my awards predictions that I literally went back and I just took the Yankees off. I'm like, I'm going to go with the Mariners. Like, I kind of like this. Let's go with that. Yankees were literally like, they were right on the doorstep for me. I was like, they added Juan Soto. Like, that team should be extremely good.
Yeah. And then now we'll do the opposite, and we'll talk about one team that made the postseason in 2023 but won't make it in 2024. This one I think is really interesting because I think there are some clear choices based off the way that the offseason has gone. But I'd like to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, there were so many that I could have picked up. We've talked about this before the podcast as well. I was like, I'm debating on the Brewers, but I feel like that division is so difficult to read. You said it's a crapshoot. I think that is the literal best definition to describe the NL Central in literally any given year. That is one of the biggest crapshoot divisions. Both the Central divisions are just a hellscape of like who's going to win this thing. I went with the Blue Jays. A lot of their offensive stars just did not take the step next, like in the last year. That really shows me like, all right, this team is prepared to be a contender. And that's what I think we've all sort of expected the Blue Jays to be. And they just have not really stepped into that limelight. For me, they've just made it in like as one of the last wild cards, barely scraped in, didn't really add in this offseason. They lost Matt Chapman. They haven't really added anyone of any consequence outside of like Yariel Rodriguez, so we don't know what they're really going to plan on doing with. I'm just not a big fan of what the Jays have been doing. I'm going to leave them out this time around.
Yeah. I think they tried really hard.
I do too.
And they just couldn't land anybody. It's like the Giants.
Yeah, they really, it's not like they didn't try. I'm not saying they just weren't able to land anyone. And now it's sort of looking at like, okay, well, you kept Kevin Kiermaier and you added Yariel Rodriguez, and now it's like, what else can you do? Because the rest, they're in a situation similar to like the Cubs, where it's like, all right, your number one free agent you could bring back is Matt Chapman, and that gets you to literally where you were at last year, where you barely made the playoffs, and every team in your division got better. Like, it's sort of a tough spot to be in.
Yeah. So I felt like there were like some pretty clear choices. The Blue Jays were sort of in there where it's like they could have better luck next year, but you never know considering how their offseason went. The Brewers, I thought, were a pretty clear one given that they've been selling a lot this offseason. But as I said about the Guardians earlier, they are a team that likes to toe the line. They're never going to fully rebuild. They do these retooling things, but they've lost, Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, and then more guys on that team, and it's not really the best situation for them. However, I'm going with the Marlins because I just think they've actually done nothing this offseason other than
they fired their general manager, so it's not looking likely to make more moves either.
That's right. That's like the biggest thing for me. That was the first thing that I thought about. Was that they fired Kim Ng. They didn't even fire Kim Ng. They were just going to hire someone above her. And then she was just like, what? Okay, I'm out of here then. And that, like, I don't know. I'm holding a grudge on them for that. But also then they did that and then added nobody. They're losing Sandy for the year for Tommy John surgery.
Best players, Jake Burger.
They lost Jorge Soler. I love Jake Burger this year. But that team was already like barely making the playoffs last year, and now it's worse. And they seem to be back in a situation where they don't want to make any moves, and that it's just a terrible combination. I wouldn't say the NL is super tight this upcoming year, but if a couple teams in the NL Central step up, or maybe the Giants or Padres have better years, or even the Mets find a way to sneak in, I think it'll be pretty easy for the Marlins to be ousted. But that's my team that's going to miss the postseason in 2024 that made it in 2023. We'll move on to our awards predictions, our way too early awards predictions, that is. And we'll start off with the most valuable player awards, and we'll start off with the American League. And honestly, as I think we've said this already, but after last year's awards voting where everybody was unanimous except for Blake Snell, who I think should have been unanimous anyway, it was nearly unanimous. This year feels a lot different, where it's not obviously like preseason is going to feel different than it did at the end of last season, but it does feel like all these awards are up for grabs. Like there's 10 options for every single one of the awards all the way through Rookie of the Year. So I think this is actually a lot more fun than last year's group, especially in the American League MVP, where it's very fun to choose Shohei and very easy because you don't have to think about it.
Oh yeah.
But now with Shohei not only out of the American League, but not pitching, it really opens everything for both awards. Who do you have for the American League
For the
MVP?
For the American League, I chose to sort of stay away from some of the favorites. I know Judge was one of the betting favorites. You have Juan Soto, of course. For me, one of the most still, and it makes no sense. One of the most underrated players in baseball still is Corey Seager, and I think Corey Seager, had he played all of last year, because he only played 119 games, and he posted like 6 F4, which is outrageous. He hit 33 home runs. He had 96 RBI. A 169 WRC plus, and he did it
Nice.
in 119 games. Yeah, it's super nice. I went with Corey Seager because I feel like that pace over a full season's worth of games, he missed 50 something games, 40 something games, I guess. It's like a huge chunk of the season with an injury. If he's able to play a full or even closer to a full season, I think that with the landscape being changed by Shohei, I think that he has a huge chance to win it on a team that's a World Series champion. Eyes are on them. And you can talk about it being like more numbers based instead of like popularity based now. There are eyes on him like nobody has ever had before, with the Rangers being good, won a World Series. Corey Seager, like, people know him now. He should be in the limelight and he should be getting his flowers because I think he's one of the best players in baseball. I really do. So I have Corey Seager for my AL MVP pick.
Hey, totally fair choice. For me, there's sort of two options and they're pretty similar. I was debating between Julio Rodriguez and Bobby Witt Jr., just super exciting power speed guys without much competition on their own teams for this award. And I feel like I'm still undecided, but I think given that the Mariners are more likely to make the playoffs and Julio would need to have an incredible season to drive them towards that, I'm leaning Julio. I just feel like he could have then be the next 40-40 guy and just really stand out. And either guy I think could be totally deserving, but just Julio being on a better team and obviously being more in the limelight as a player on a better team, he probably has more votes going his way. So I'm going Julio. And then in the National League, who do you got? I think this one's pretty fun, especially because you got a lot of the guys that were in the race last year. But there are still a couple guys that feel like they deserve more attention than they usually get.
Yeah, I went with a boring pick for this one, and I went with NL MVP runner-up Mookie Betts
Ooh,
because I tried and tried and tried, and I was
no,
like,
not hard enough.
I couldn't in my head make an argument for anyone else. I was like, I don't think Ronald's going to go back to back. That no, like, just his numbers were so otherworldly. It's like it's so difficult to have a season like that 2 years in a row. Mookie just came up short. Had like a pretty rough last month of the season anyway. That sort of took him out of it. I think Mookie, this just feels like the year that he's going to win it again. I mean, last year was just so wild for him. He hit 39 home runs, 8.3 F4, 167 WRC plus. He's Mookie Betts, man. Like, it's as much as I hate the Dodgers, I love Mookie Betts, and that kind of offsets it for me. I know it doesn't really work that way for you because you're a Giants fan, but Mookie will transcend the Dodgers hate for me. I just love that guy so much. So yeah, I had to go with Mookie.
Let's hope Shohei can do the same. But I could not get myself to pick a Dodger despite the three guys in the top 6 of the odds right now. But I did pick a guy that is in that group, and I'm going with Fernando Tatis Jr. Obviously had a lot of controversy in the past couple of years. It's not the type of controversy that usually leads me to dislike a player. I'm not one to hold steroids or getting injured against a player like that. But what I do think could happen is that he just returns to what he was doing prior to his injury and everything in 2022. 2021, he was like a 42-25 guy. Last year, he stole 29 bases. If he's a 40-30 guy, maybe 45-30, bats 300, and does what he did in right field last year, which was win a Platinum Glove Award. That's the best fielder in the whole National League. And then also just incredible power speed numbers. And he helps the Padres back to the playoffs or close to it. I think he's back on top. And he really is just such an exciting player. And I think last year's slight power outage where he hit less than 30 home runs sort of made us forget a little bit about how good he is. But if you go and you look at the StatCast numbers and the projections for 2024, is a guy that's going to be right back on top. And even if he's a 35-25 guy, I still think just that combined with the fielding that he has in right field is going to carry him over the top. And like with Mookie moving to second base, his WAR numbers are going to be lower. And Ronald is, got a great arm and is better than Tatis in the speed department, but I don't think he's a better power hitter. And he's not a great fielder. So I think Tatis, it's going to be close, but I think Tatis can pull it off.
Yeah, I definitely do too. I like Tatis's chances a lot. You made the mention too, like he's not of competing with guys on your team. And one of the biggest competitors on his team last year is now gone with Juan Soto. So I feel like Tatis, if he's going to carry that team, like those eyes are going to be more on him too. I like that pick a whole lot.
Thank you. And we can move on to the pitching side. Cy Young predictions for 2024. This one's also really fun. I think Cy Young's always really fun because there's so much. Last year was really fun, but there's so much luck that goes into like a pitcher being good as opposed to a batter being good. Sometimes a batter can have crazy BABIP and it'll boost their batting average. But if you're not hitting home runs or whatever, like it doesn't matter if you hit 350, like you're not going to be MVP. We saw that with Arias last year, no matter how deserving of his batting average he was. But like with a pitcher, you get lucky and you post a 2.10 ERA, like you're going to win MVP or Cy Young. It doesn't matter. So it's really exciting if you can convince yourself of a pitcher having a lot of success. And in the American League, there's plenty of options. Who do you got winning the 2024 American League Cy Young?
Back-to-back years picking a Mariner, but this time it's not going to be Luis Castillo, even though I had to kind of talk myself out of it. I'm going to go with George Kirby. I also do. So I picked him. It's my boy right there. You can go look at his Fangraphs page and you can see the numbers for yourself. Posted like 4.4 F4. George Kirby. He throws strikes. He does it well. I feel like if he can limit the starts where he just sort of got blown up at around 3 or 4 innings last year, he's going to easily eclipse 200 innings. He's going to never walk anybody. He's going to get pretty much everyone out. And I think he could post a low threes, maybe even a sub 3 with those sort of numbers, just eating a ton of innings would be great. You can go look at, it's one of my favorite websites to look at pitchers on, and it's Pitcher List. Jake works for them. Check them out. Sir. You can go check out George Kirby's page for PLV on Pitcher List, and you just see a whole bunch of red except for one. He just doesn't walk anybody. His whips in like the top 10th percentile. Like he just does everything. Like he's just such a solid pitcher. And I think that if he takes just somehow one more step up, one more even half step up, because he was like a low 3 ERA and underlying numbers guy last year, I think George Kirby is going to be one of the catalysts of like this team being really good. I think the AL West is so, like, you talk about all the other like divisions being open. I think the AL West, if the Mariners can be like, if their young guys can take the next step up, this division is just as wide open. And I really like George Kirby to be part of that. I think he's going to win the cycle.
Yeah, I feel like he is one of my top choices as well. I was considering him and somebody else. Just his elite ability. He's the premier command guy in all of baseball. Honestly, one of the best command pitchers of all time. If you consider era, I'm sure if we go look at like walk percentage plus, he's probably got one of the lowest ones of all time.
One thing before you go, I also looked at numbers similar to a guy that was considered like in the race or a favorite even this year ahead of him for like most betting odds. His numbers last year were better than Framber Valdez, and Framber Valdez is better than, like, he's higher on the betting odds than him. George Kirby posted better numbers. Like, I was like, I don't understand how he's ranked so low here, because if Framber Valdez is like your third favorite in the AL, he had better numbers than him. George Kirby should be up there.
Yeah, for sure. And he's already tossed 190 innings last year, so he could easily eclipse 200. It's like the only step he needs to take right now is just striking out more batters. He struck out 172 over those 190 innings last year, is less than a 25% strikeout rate. If he gets up to 25 or above and like eclipses 200 strikeouts, which is feasible given that he has one of the highest swinging strike rate fastballs in all of baseball, which is crazy considering he's like a command artist.
Yeah, considering he never walks anyone.
Yeah,
like he's such an anomaly.
If he can just get more whiffs across his whole arsenal, which will help him increase his strikeout rate. It's like, it's so clear that's a guy that could have a sub-3 ERA, a sub-1 WHIP, and a over 200 strikeouts in 200 innings, and that'll do it. It's hard to beat that. I'm going a little bit different route. I love some of the options here. I'm not a big fan of the top guys. I think Corbin Burns going to Baltimore is interesting given the park boost and I think the defensive transition is worse. Not sure, but the park boost is huge and he should get more wins. So from like a fantasy perspective, it's great, but I don't think he's going to pull off a Cy Young. He's been, going downhill over the past couple of years, not super fast, but slowly. Pablo Lopez is also really fun. And then Cole Reagans just was incredible in the second half last year. And I love the other two Orioles guys and Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez. They had incredible second halves, and I think they'll both be all-stars at least. But I'm going with Tarek Skubal, and
that's a fun one too.
The one point to go against that is he threw so many innings so few innings last year after returning from surgery. And I think he's probably going to be a guy that's limited around 160, 170 innings. But if he does like Blake Snell 2.0, where he just, is incredible across his workload, I think he can win it. He boosted his fastball velocity last year by like 1.5 miles. He had the best changeup in baseball. And if he can turn his slider into a plus pitch, he's going to be absolutely incredible. He was literally like a top 3 pitcher in baseball in the second half last year. He was so good.
He had a 2 flat FIP, a 3.3 WAR in like 80 innings.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah, if he can really carry that over into 2024 and then just put up a decent enough workload where it's not like he's automatically counted out because he only threw 140 innings or whatever. If he throws 160 to 175, that's chill. I feel like that's great. And if he's putting up low 2 ERAs with a 30+% strikeout rate, it's going to be hard to compete with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I had not really realized just how good he was. I'm like, oh yeah, Tarek Skubal, like that looks pretty solid. I didn't look into his numbers. Yeah, that's crazy if he can continue that pace.
Yeah. So I'm pumped for that one. And we can move to the final award, Rookie of the Year. This one's super exciting. I feel like there are just so many options.
We didn't do our NL picks for Cy Young.
You're right. I'm moving too fast.
Who'd you start with this one then? Who did you pick for your NL pick for Cy Young?
Oh, I need to pull up the odds again. I looked at the guys here. There's some top ones. There's some newcomers. I feel like the sort of back end is not really as fun as the top end in terms of like the guys who have lower odds. I don't feel really have a chance at all. Like, I don't know, Sonny Gray, Jesus Luzardo, Freddie Peralta, they can have great years, but I don't think they're going to be Cy Young guys. So I just went with the homer pick. My boy, Logan Webb, he's going to do it. He's going to just have a freaking year and he's going to win the Cy Young. And there's no analysis behind that other than he's a great pitcher. His dad follows me on Twitter and that's your boy. He's my boy. Exactly.
Yeah, I went with Zach Wheeler. I was like, I feel like this is going to be the year Zach Wheeler.
So bad.
It's like this is going to be Zach Wheeler, like the year Zach Wheeler finally gets his flowers and just wins the Cy Young because he's had I don't know how many like 3rd place, 4th place, like runner-up finishes and just not won. Last year, you could really argue he's deserving as well, and just feels like he never got any of the shine he really deserved. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball the last like 5 years and has not really gotten any of the credit he really deserves. I feel like Zach Wheeler, he's due. He's due for Cy Young.
I love that. Totally agree. Yeah. Oh, now we can move over to Rookie of the Year. Yeah, and NL Cy Young will be interesting because there's like a clear front runner in Strider, but I feel like nobody believes he's gonna win it.
Yeah, the thing is like, Strider posts the gaudy strikeout numbers, and then his ERA will be like 4.
Then his FIP will be like
his FIP will be like under 2.3. It's like. Yeah, but then you have to take into account the Chud voters that look at the traditional stats. They're like, oh he only won 6. He only won 16.
I wouldn't even say it's just Chuds though, because my boss Nick Pollock is like, he's a huge like advanced stats guy. But when he says voting for Cy Young, it's like it's about what happened. We're not talking about what could have happened.
Right.
And there's a big argument around FIP being more of a descriptor than a predictor. that's an argument that you can use FIP as it, and that's why Fangraphs does FIP based WAR for pitchers. So there is an argument to have FIP is what happened, but some people like to see it as ERA is what happened. It's how many runs he allowed, how many innings did he pitch. It doesn't matter how you got there. And he is literally just like who had the most innings and the lowest ERA. That's him. And this is like he's making pitching stats all the time. So there's definitely plenty of arguments to go around. And I don't even know what to decide on that. But yeah, Spencer Strider, I feel like he's just so dominant, but it's like there's something about all the home runs that he allows that it's like his ERA is just never low enough. But he will win one at some point.
At some point he has to. So I've been going first for all the other ones. We can move on to Rookie of the Year. Who's your AL Rookie of the Year pick?
I love all of the options here. I think it's super interesting to see like a guy like Colt Keith, who got extended, will be in the majors opening day. And there's obviously always the possibility that just some random rookie comes up and has a good year. But there are the top 5 options are really big. Obviously, the consensus top guy, Jackson Holliday. You got postseason legend Evan Carter. 2023 first round pick Wyatt Langford, and then Nolan Schanuel, the first guy to debut from that draft, and then also Junior Caminero, who I really like, but I feel like this one is so obvious that it's Evan Carter because he's already proven that he can handle the major leagues. Schanuel did that, but Evan Carter played in the playoffs, won the World Series. Like he's going to have no nerves, and he proved already not only that he could handle the major leagues, but that he was elite in the major leagues. And this is not like a roto fantasy league where you're just going to be counting his batting average, his home runs, and his stolen bases. This guy can play an elite outfield and is going to walk just an incredible amount. So if he's got a super high OBP and he's playing great defense in the outfield, that overall WAR is going to look incredible. And I feel like it's going to be close, especially if Holliday makes a debut early in the year. Schanuel continues to hit for contact, and Caminero does what I believe he can do. But I think Carter's just already shown incredible resolve in the playoffs in the highest of stakes. And I feel like there's no shot he doesn't win that.
Yeah, I really don't feel like I need to add anything to that because he's the same pick that I made. Evan Carter, nice. I think, is the clearest one. Jackson Holliday was the other one that I talked about, and I mentioned it before the podcast, that I just don't think he's going to come up early enough to really compete with the pace that I think Evan Carter is going to be on. I think Evan Carter is going to be so rock steady because you said he's not phased by it. He's put up like 1.3 F4 in like 20 games. He walks a ton. He hits for power. He's great base stealer. He's an excellent defender. He just does everything you want him to. The only thing is that you could argue with from his numbers last year is like, oh, well, he struck out too much. Well, yeah, he played 20 games. That sample size is a little bit skewed. Evan Carter, I think, is the clearest pick for this just because he's so ready-made for it. He's a World Series champion. Like, he's going to win Rookie of the Year.
Agreed. Should I go first for National League?
It's up to you. I think, NL Rookie of the Year is a really interesting debate.
It is because you got some of the top Japanese talent coming over. Yoshinobu Yamamoto seems like a clear favorite, but Shota Imanaga on the Cubs is, I think, very underrated. And then obviously you got Jung-Hoo Lee from the KBO going to the Giants. He'll be in there as well. And then you got a bunch of young rookies that are looking to make names of themselves. The top prospect, second prospect in baseball, Jackson Chourio, Noel V. Marte showed some success last year, and I love what Jordan Lawler can do. And even, PCA's got a chance because he's so good at fielding, and Paul Skeens, #1 pick from last year, depends on when he debuts, but he's got a shot. And even Kyle Harrison of the Giants just has electric stuff. He's just going to have a pretty small workload. But I would like to pick Yamamoto, but there's no chance I'm picking the Dodger. So I'm going with your guy, Shota Imanaga. I just think he's really underrated. And while he's had incredible numbers in NPB, there is a sense that he's not going to carry over that level. And obviously you get that sense with anybody transferring leagues to the US. But I just feel like he has another level that he can reach with the modern pitching development in MLB, or maybe just Western pitching development, if you want to consider it that way.
We also got to see him dominate Team USA, who are all big leaguers in the WBC Classic, like in the final. Like he dominated the entire lineup.
Yeah. I just think like the sense right now is he's sort of what my boss Nick Pollock terms a Holly, which is like a Toby with a 20 to 25% strikeout rate. So like a guy that's going to produce, low 4s ERA with a pretty solid strikeout rate, and it will generally be good for your fantasy team. I think Imanaga is above that. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to have a low 3s ERA and could actually flirt with a really high strikeout rate, and could really compete with Yamamoto. And I feel like the Cubs will have a looser leash than the Dodgers will with Yamamoto. The Dodgers are just known to, have those phantom IL stints, and they're probably going to limit Yamamoto's innings because they have him for, 10 years or
Forever.
whatever. Yeah. So, and it's like Imanaga does have a long contract, but he's older. He can go out and just immediately throw 180 to 200 innings with a low 3s ERA and 200 strikeouts. And, I think that would be incredible. And that's like, that would put him in consideration for Cy Young.
Cy
But
Young, yeah.
yeah.
I went with the obvious choice. He's the betting favorite. I went with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and I talked about this on the other podcast. Like when he signed with the Dodgers, this is a guy I've been excited about for literal years. Like he's one of the most exciting players that's come over from Japan in a long time, probably since Ohtani for me. I think the guy's just, if you watch him throw, it's electric. He's a smaller guy. He throws very violently. I just think the guy is really good. And it sucks that I had to pick another Dodger. I know I had to pick Mookie for NL MVP. I hate that I'm doing this, but I think Yamamoto,
Sure.
I've been such a big fan of his for a couple years. Like I'm not going to not pick him for Rookie of the Year. I just think he's going to be just as electric as he was in NPB, maybe a little less so. He'll probably have a little bit of growing pains, a little teething. It is what it is. You see that with pretty much every import that comes over at some point. Baseball's a game of highs and lows, ebbs and flows, and it's just, I think Yamamoto will kind of overcome that. I think he'll be really good. I think he's going to end up being the de facto ace of this staff until Ohtani comes back, and he's just going to run away with this probably with a month or so left to go.
Yeah, I'd love to see that if he wasn't on the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's the same. It's like I hate that he's on the Dodgers because he would genuinely be like one of my favorite baseball players if he was not a Los Angeles Dodger.
That's why this is the worst offseason ever. Anyway, we can move on to World Series matchup winner and MVP. I know you're not picking the Dodgers here. Who do you got making the World Series? Who do you got winning, and who's going to be the best player on those teams?
I got rematch time, 1 year delayed. I got the Astros and the Phillies. I have the Phillies in 6, and I have my NL Cy Young winner, Zach Wheeler, winning a couple of those games. Zach Wheeler, MVP.
Nice. I went a completely different route, meaning I chose 2 different teams. I feel like it's going to be like the Braves are just so good. They're so well built, and they're not afraid to go out and trade for more guys if they need reinforcements. And they've had a great offseason already. And I picked them to make the World Series last year. It's like the only team that can stop them is the Phillies, and we'll see how that goes. But I think the Braves are going to make the World Series. And then in the American League, now that we've seen them sort of double down,
That would be
Orioles.
That'd be a fun
and I'm going
series.
Orioles 2024 World Series champions and World Series MVP Anthony Santander. He's just a very solid, reliable guy. And I actually did just see a tweet. Let's see if it's still there. Oh, I lost it. It was like most go ahead or like game tying home runs in the past 2 years, and he was number 1. He was like 12. Yeah. So I feel like if he's just clutch and very solid, which I feel like a lot of times baseball is so different from basketball and football in that you get the championship MVPs are never like the biggest player. We saw that like, Steph Curry won it last year when the Warriors won, or it's like in football, it's almost always the quarterback. But in baseball, it's like it could be anyone. It could be the biggest star on the team, or it could be a role player or a pitcher, or even like a closer that just is dominant throughout a 7-game series or whatever. But I think Santander really gives me MVP vibe. So if the Orioles do win it all, I do think it'll be Santander. But I feel like that team is just so good, and maybe I'm a year early. But the fact that they've added Corbin Burns, and that sort of suggests that with this new ownership group, they won't be afraid to add midseason as well, that they could go all the way and really take on the Braves. And I think that would be a really fun matchup.
Oh, it would. That would be a really, really fun
Except
matchup.
for their closer is freaking Craig Kimbrell, and that scares the shit out of me.
Oh God, I forgot about that. Well,
Yeah, so
maybe
it's
he'll
like if they
be.
had Felix Bautista, I'd be pumped.
Maybe they'll let him set up for Yenier Cano.
No,
Maybe
Yennier
they'll.
Cano's no. No. I think they'll have to
I
add
don't know, man.
somebody at the deadline, but
Kinley Jansen. They can have two washed up dudes. That'd be
yeah.
the best. Um. Okay, I think that's an exciting World Series prediction to go with my extremely boring World Series prediction. Um. I told you my predictions were kind of mid. My predictions are really
But hey,
boring.
but now you got your
I tried
chance.
to be safe. So, what was your bold prediction, Jake? What's your
Um,
big bold prediction for this season?
I did not have much time to think about this, but I feel like I've made this bold prediction before. I'm going to do it again. The A's will not be the worst team in baseball.
They weren't last year, which is
Yes, they were.
somehow a miracle. And you know who was?
Yes, they were the worst team in baseball.
Did they finish with the worst record?
50 and 112.
What was
The
the
second
Royals
worst
record?
team was 56 and 106. It was the Kansas City Royals. They
Oh
finished 6
well,
games above them. So yeah, they were
dang.
really bad. But I
Someone's
think
gonna.
they
The
won't be the
White
worst
Sox are
this
gonna.
year.
The White Sox are
The
gonna be
White
worse than
Sox are
them.
so bad. They're going to be
The
so
White
bad
Sox are
next
gonna be
year.
worse than them. You know who's not gonna be the second worst team in baseball this year, Jake?
The Rockies.
The damn Kansas City Royals, because they're going to win the AL Central. That's my bold prediction is here.
Yo,
The
that's
Royals are going to win the
crazy.
damn AL Central. They have the highest luxury tax payroll. They have the highest luxury tax payroll now with the Bobby Witt extension in the AL Central. I think their odds have gone up exponentially. I think Bobby Witt is, like you said, I think he's a legitimate MVP caliber player. I think they're going to get a full season of Vinny Pasquantino. I think they're going to get full seasons and steps up from guys like Michael Garcia. I really am pretty bullish on them. They've added. I think the rest of that division is, quite frankly, pretty dog shit. I don't think they're really good. The White Sox are terrible. They're not going to be a factor. I think the Guardians are going to be pretty terrible, especially if they trade Clase and Bieber, which they still have time to do. I think their only threat at this point is the Twins. They lost Sonny Gray. They lost pieces in their lineup, and they haven't really added anyone. I think the Royals kind of look like they should be near the top of this division. I'm banking on the Royals. I think they're going to win the division somehow with like 84 wins. I think they're going to win with like 84 wins. They're still going to be pretty bad, and I think they're going to win the AL Central. That's my bold prediction. I'm banking on the Royals, baby. You talked about the Orioles for whatever reason being the team that you have the most stuff for. For me, that's the Royals. I don't know why. That they're my boys. Apparently, I'm going with the Royals to win the Central.
Nice, very bold.
Cole Reagans might win the Cy Young. We'll look like an idiot. Bobby Witt's going to win the MVP. They're going to win 142 games.
Well, it's a beautiful transition for us to move away from our way too early 2024 predictions and into off-season transactions as we near the hour point. So I guess we won't spend too much time. It's really a lot of minor moves, but we'll start off with the extensions and with the guy you mentioned, Bobby Witt Jr., who signed just a earth-shattering extension, 11 years, 288.8 million. It's actually 288.77777 to infinity. But yeah, that is a huge deal. He can opt out 4 times. He can opt out in after 2030, 31, 32, and 33. But if he doesn't opt out, then the Royals will have a 3-year club option worth $89 million for the following 3 years, 35 through 37, meaning the deal could max out at 14 years and $377 million, where the previous franchise record here was $82 million in an extension for Salvador Perez prior to 2021. That's crazy. And I think it's completely deserved. And I love that the Royals are just so weird with their money, but sometimes they give it to the guys who deserve it the most. And they did that here.
Completely agree. I think Bobby Witt Jr., especially signing for a small market team like the Kansas City Royals, is just excellent for baseball. Keeping your stars in markets like that where they desperately need someone like that is just good for the sport. It's good for parity. I think that he's an excellent player, man. He's just so good. And really, because the Royals were so bad last year, he really just did not get any of the recognition he well and truly deserved. This guy's he's going to be a star of the game for a long, long time. And it's really nice to see him stay with the Royals.
Yeah, super sick. Just like a crazy amount of money, but yeah, love to see that. Love to see them double down. And they sort of did the same with Salvador Perez when they extended him, because they had him under a deal and then they sort of like felt bad. Like imagine the Braves like a couple years ago being like, oh, it sort of messed up what we did. So we're going to extend you further and for more money. Like we have you at a cheaper rate, but we're going to give you more because we feel bad that we're taking advantage.
You know what, that for me, that makes your franchise look really mature and really friendly to like free agents. Like,
Yeah.
because they're not going to be huge spenders. They're not going to outspend the Dodgers. That's just not going to happen. But for now, like that looks like, okay, if you're a mid-level guy like a Michael Wacha and like some of these other guys like Hunter Renfroe, it's like, okay, those guys might treat me good. Like I'm going to sign there and I'm going to give it a chance. That's what you need for a team like this. I think Kansas City, if they're just good, not even great for the next, like, I don't know, 6 years, they'll probably win the Central every year just by being good because the rest of that division actively doesn't want to win it. Like, these are the moves that they need to be making. I love the Perez move, and I love that analogy you made. It's just, it looks so good for a franchise like this.
Yeah. And you said it's good for teams to be extending young players like this. And I just thought it was really funny that Twitter did it faster than I did. But Ken Rosenthal had written that just insane
stupid article about Wander Franco.
Yeah, Wander Franco, and comparing
the risks.
Comparing Fernando Tatis to him, the risk of extending, young players. And then he goes the opposite way, goes back on what he said and says, this is a great extension for Bobby Witt Jr. It's just like, oh, okay. So it's only bad if they're not white.
Yeah, like that. What a stupid article.
Because it was about Ken Rosenthal, but he's such an idiot this offseason.
He's been such an idiot. He hasn't even broke that much news either. So it's like Ken's having an absolute nightmare in offseason. The thing about the Wander Franco too is like, what is the risk that they're going to be a pedophile? That's stupid. It's literally an anomalous thing. That guy's I don't know,
ridiculous.
Fuck Ken Rosenthal hardcore right now.
Which is crazy that we've come here 89 episodes after our first episode where we talked about the MLB firing Ken Rosenthal. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yes, I do remember that.
We've come so far.
They're so stupid. Now
full circle. We can end. This is our last episode. We can just end it here. Full circle.
Yeah, the Ken Rosenthal saga is now over. Ken Rosenthal has entered Chud territory. Way to be an idiot.
And we actually had another extension. This one was pretty surprising. The Astros extended Jose Altuve for 5 years, $125 million. He was set to be a free agent after 2024. So, they got ahead of it. They jumped ahead of the ball and they locked him down. He'll spend the entirety of his career as an Astro, which seems fitting given that I can't imagine him going to another team because of all the boos that he would get from his own team. But Jose Altuve, incredible. I don't hold anything against him for the banging scheme. Everybody knows where I stand on their pro banging scheme as a not an Astros fan. Maybe the only non-Astros fan that's pro banging scheme. But anyway, I think that's awesome to see him get that money. It's not a lot of money. I think he makes like 30 million over the next 3 years, and then or maybe it's 35, and then he gets 10 million over the last couple of years. I don't know. I don't think it makes a difference how much money it is, but it is cool to see Altuve get to stay with his team for the rest of his career.
That is true. He feels like he's been the face of the Astros for years upon years now, and that probably needs to continue. It's not a guy that you need to let go. Astros can afford, even if he's just not that good, which he's still very good. Like even if he's not as great, he's just like, all right, here's a thank you sort of deal for Jose Altuve. I'm also like, from a sentimental standpoint, from a baseball standpoint, I hate those deals. Altuve still, obviously he's good at baseball. Even from a sentimental standpoint, though, like those deals are so cool. Like, all right, please stay forever. I'd like the Joe Maury kind of deals. So shout out to that. I love Joe. Yeah. Jose Altuve kind of staying with the Astros until he retires. You just don't see that anymore. I know, like we talked about like Kershaw earlier. We'll talk about that later. Sign. It's weird to see like, the one random team at like the end of like someone's like baseball reference page if they've been with one team forever. Can't imagine that without Altuve.
Ruins it all. Yeah, like Joey Votto's about to do probably.
Yeah, that's gonna suck.
Put him on the Blue Jays. It's like he literally just exactly replaces Brandon Belt.
Yeah, that would be cool. Plus,
he's the Canadian guy. Yeah, it just seems too perfect that it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, that's gonna suck. He's gonna end up signing with like Pirates or something. It's gonna be really
Angels.
Nasty. Oh God, don't say that.
Yeah. You want to take back over?
Sure, I sure will. So now we are done with our extensions. We have transactions to talk about. And the first one is a pretty big one, as Jake's been talking about with all of his Orioles gear on. It is the Brewers trading Corbin Burns to the Baltimore Orioles in exchange for infield prospect Joey Ortiz. They literally had him listed as infield, not any specific position. He's a number 63 prospect in all of baseball. He's number 6 in the Baltimore system. DL Hall is pitcher. He was the 34th and the 34th pick in the 2024 draft. What pick was DL Hall? Because he was was he a first round pick?
Let me pull it up.
So I don't remember what he was. But Ortiz, by the way, is now the number 5 prospect in Milwaukee's system and should
DL
have
Hall was the 21st overall pick in 2017.
There you go. So he was a first round pick. Joey Ortiz, number 5 prospect in the Brewers system, has a chance to probably be on their opening day roster because there are talks about trading Willy Adames.
Oh, and even if they don't trade Willy Adames, I think he's their opening day third baseman. Like they were going into the year looking at like Andrew Monasterio as their third baseman.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
So they weren't they really actually needed to add a third baseman if they were going to do anything, and that actually fits really well. So even if they don't move Adames, which I've seen him connected to the Giants, which would be pretty cool.
That would be cool. I said that like last podcast, or either to you in No, I didn't say that last podcast. I sent that to you in a tweet where they said that they were going to trade Willy Adames. I was like, he's either getting traded to the Jets or he's getting traded to the Giants.
Yeah. This trade felt so light because Corbin Burns is one of the best pitchers in baseball and has been like a top 3 pitcher in baseball for the past 3 years. And it's just 1 year of him. So I guess it's a pretty solid return for 1 year. We'll see what they do with that draft pick. Joey Ortiz, I think pretty underrated just because there are so many good prospects in the Baltimore system. The fact that he's nearly like a top 50 prospect should tell you all you need to know. He's a very solid hitter. He's not going to like blow your socks off, but what he does do is play really good defense and, put him at third, put him at short. I think he's going to fit really well there. And if he can hit solidly enough, he should be great. And I think DL Hall is actually a very interesting candidate. He just struggles a lot with his control. So he's a guy that you can put in the bullpen and make him absolutely insane, or try him out in the rotation, maybe fix something else. I love the Brewers pitching development. I can imagine this going like multiple ways. Either DL Hall becomes an insane starting pitcher, or he moves to the bullpen and he's the next Josh Hader. And I think either way, he's going to have a ton of success there because this was an exciting, like very sleeper breakout pick for 2024. So that's very interesting, but it's worth the price of admission for the Orioles as they get the ace that they absolutely needed. Their rotation just needed anything, and getting one of the best pitchers in baseball is humongous. And it makes the rotation go from one that was super underwhelming to one that's actually one of the best in baseball, especially on the top 3 with Burns, Grayson Rodriguez, and Kyle Bradish. That's an incredible top 3, which for like casual baseball fans, you look at that and you only know Corbin Burns and maybe Gray Rod because you're tapped into prospects. But Kyle Bradish was so good in the second half last year and was great in the playoffs. Grayson Rodriguez, incredible in the second half. And actually all 3 of them might have been 3 of the best pitchers in baseball in the second half last year. And just putting that on a team that has so much offensive talent, already has a pretty solid foundation in the rotation, is great at pitching development in the bullpen, and should be getting Felix Bautista back in 2025, which really doesn't factor into this trade. I just love that the Orioles, after really sitting on their hands for so long, hoarding prospects, all this stuff, finally went out and just got the guy that they needed. And all it took was a new ownership group. But yeah, super, super awesome to see the Orioles go and get Corbin Burns. And I'm pumped to see that team just dominate next year.
Yeah, I'm glad Corbin Burns is out of the NL Central, but he made it pretty clear in the previous offseason during their arbitration negotiations, which have notoriously pissed off quite a few players and sort of turned them away from their own teams. Corbin Burns is one of them. He was basically confirmed on his own that he had no intentions of ever re-signing with the Brewers, so they were kind of had the writing on the wall. They traded him, I think, DL Hall and Joey Ortiz for 1 year. Corbin Burns is a really good return. I think Joey Ortiz,
like they didn't even have to give up a top 5 prospect.
Right. I think Joey Ortiz, it's a great trade for Baltimore. They got rid of DL Hall, who was struggling. He doesn't really fit into their rotation plans because he's struggling to throw strikes. He doesn't really fit into their bullpen because the back end of it is just so loaded right now. Trading him, you can live with that. Joey Ortiz, same thing. Infield logjam. Where is he going to play with the Baltimore Orioles? The Brewers have an opening for that. Obviously, the value there is very good. He's either going to play shortstop. If Adames is gone, maybe he might play third. We don't know. He's going to play somewhere, and he's probably going to be pretty solid. DL Hall, I'm a big fan. Brewers pitching development is notoriously just excellent. It's so good. Him being there, he's either going to be a front of the line starter or he's going to be an excellent back end bullpen option. He's just ridiculous. Go look at his PLV page. The guy is just really stupid. But Corbin Burns, I mean, you're getting him for guys you don't really need. Basically, the Brewers are like, he told the Brewers to go fuck off. He's not going to sign for them. He's not going to sign for them. Might as well get rid of him. I don't hate that move for them. So I think it's a great move all around. It's one of the very rare at the time win-win trades. It might go one way or the other later on down the line. We don't know, obviously, because we're not soothsayers. We're not future seers. But this trade in a vacuum.
We just did predictions, excellent. Bro. Yes, we are.
Ultimate ball knowers right here.
I think the Reds need to do this because they have the same glut of infield talent and a need in the rotation.
But now who do they trade for?
Yeah, they would need an ace. Go get
like who do they trade for?
Dylan Cease.
Go trade for Dylan Cease and then trade for Blake Snell. Or I'm an idiot. Go sign Blake Snell and trade for Dylan Cease.
They have so many starters though. It's like they need to do something. Yeah, but it's like right now they have too many starters and too many infielders.
But they signed
get Dylan Cease and Luis Robert. No, they signed Frankie Montas and Nick Martinez.
Who cares about either of those guys?
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. They need an ace. They don't have an ace. I think Hunter Green can get there, but it's like they have so much potential in the rotation right now, and nobody like really solid. I don't know. We don't have to spend time on the Reds.
We'll talk about the Reds later. We can talk about the Cardinals now, their division mates, because they signed Keenan Middleton to add to their bullpen, who lost Jordan Hicks over the offseason. He has a 1-year, $5 million deal, which includes a $6 million club option and a $1 million buyout in 2025.
Yeah, I love what the Cardinals are doing with their bullpen, which is pretty crazy given how bad they were last year. But with, the 1-2 punch of Helsley and Gallegos at the top, and then backing that up with a guy like Jojo Romero, who was a quiet breakout last year. They also added Andrew Kittredge and Keenan Middleton, both guys who I think are good when you're using them in middle relief roles like they will be used because they're not guys that you really want to rely on as setup guys, though we've seen both of these guys really have a lot of success when they are healthy. But having these guys as somewhat of a depth when you've got a top three of Romero, Helsley, and Gallegos is really interesting. And then they've got Andre Piante, who's the best ground ball pitcher in all of baseball. It's like the amount of looks you have in that bullpen is super interesting. They could use another lefty. I'm not sure I trust John King that much, but I absolutely love this bullpen. I think it could be really interesting, but it's all going to be up to the starting rotation and the offense providing leads for them to hold.
Definitely. So I don't have much more to add on Keenan Middleton, and we can move on to another pitcher signing, this time signed by the Mets, and it's Shintaro Fujinami, who had sort of an up and down season after coming over from NPB the previous season. They signed him to a 1-year, $3.35 million deal. It's got $850,000 worth of incentives baked into that deal. Fujinami sort of had a really, really, really rough start as a starter, and then his second half, surprisingly, really good.
Yeah, I made a tweet that got only 215 views. So to the 2 viewers watching, I'll read it back out. He had a rocky debut with a 7.18 ERA across 79 innings with Oakland and Baltimore. However, I think there are reasons to get excited about Fujinami's potential. Not only does he throw a 99 mile per hour fastball with a 93 mile per hour splitter, but he also improved as the season wore on. He was much better in Baltimore with an ERA 3.72 runs lower than his time in Oakland and a strikeout minus walk percentage more than 4% higher. But he actually began improving before he changed threads. In his final 15 and a third with Oakland, he walked just one batter against 17 strikeouts with a 2.93 ERA. And that was after posting an 11.12 ERA with a 34 to 29 strikeout to walk ratio in his first 34 innings pitched. So he had no control and was just absolutely terrible. So if we include that final run with Oakland, where he figured out his command and his numbers with the Orioles. He actually has some pretty intriguing numbers. So this is from June 13th through the end of the year. Tossed 45 innings, a 4.20 ERA with a 3.50 FIP, a 1.13 WHIP, and a 26.3% strikeout rate next to an 8.6% walk rate. So if he maintains that newfound control, I think it'll allow him to avoid the gopher ball, the home run ball, and find a lot more success. But he definitely has the stuff. As I said, the guy can throw 100 miles per hour and a mid-90s splitter.
Definitely so. Foolish Baseball also had a tweet that's pretty similar. It's
Copy.
As a starter, he was just a lot worse than he was as a reliever. I think if this is specifically just as a relief pitching signing, it's great. I think this is also a situation where I don't think that the Mets are planning on contending. I think this is more of a retool sort of year. Give him a chance. Might as well. I think the guy has boundless potential. You talked about it too. I think he just has more potential as a reliever than as a starter. And that was sort of the case when he came over anyway as like from NPB. They tried to stretch him out in Oakland again as a starter when I think his best results when he was in NPB were as a reliever. So I like this move to keep him in the bullpen. Hopefully the Mets just don't mess him up. That would be absolutely wonderful because I like him a lot. I think he's a pretty good guy. We can move on. We can talk about one of my favorite baseball players of the last 10 years, and it's Carlos Santana signing with the Minnesota Twins on a 1-year, $5.25 million deal. It has a bunch of incentives in there, but we're not really sure of all of them so far. Carlos Santana trying to collect all of the random teams he possibly can. Going to be an immaculate grid legend at the end of his career.
I love Carlos Santana. He's honestly been one of my favorite players for a long time, and mostly because of like my home league. He's just always been a guy who walks just so much and strikes out so little. So he was just great in my home league. And so like for the past like 5-6 years, it's just always been, oh man, yeah, Carlos Santana's old as shit. So like he's not going to be good anymore. And then he's always good. He's crazy.
Always good because he
plays the whole year. And he doesn't strike out. And so I think it's crazy that like even going into his age 38 season, he's like still going to be very solid. And yeah, he's just like, I've never heard anything bad about him. He's always been pretty solid. I love that he used to be a catcher. But he fits very well with this Twins team. And honestly, I'd love him on any team, but they are sort of going into the year without a first baseman until they signed him. They had like Jose Miranda, who really struggled last year and underwent surgery, and he's not ready to play the field. And then so they were going to be forced with like putting Edouard Julien and Kyle Farmer at first base and just like moving a bunch of guys around. Maybe Alex Kirilloff plays first, but it wasn't ideal. So you add a veteran like Carlos Santana, who just solidifies that position, and then allows more flexibility in the rest of the team. I think it's super awesome, and he really adds to this lineup beautifully just because he just does exactly what you want him to do. I feel like he's probably not going to fall off. He's not going to have an all-star caliber season, but he's just going to be there and just the GOAT.
Definitely so. This was his 7th team he's played for in his career. He's getting close to like the illustrious playing for every team in a division thing because he'll now have the Guardians, he'll have the Royals, and he'll have the Twins on there. He just has to get the other two. So yeah, it's a good move for Carlos Santana. He posted a pretty good numbers last year, like very quietly playing for the Pirates, and then he got traded to who did he get traded to? Brewers. That's right. Yeah, he posted like 1.7 F4, he hit 23 home runs. Like it's pretty solid for a guy that's like 37. He's gonna be 38. Like
so quiet too. Nobody thought about him.
Yeah, nobody ever really thinks about.
I'm working on my rankings right now, and like I got to him to project him for next year, and I was like, holy shit, how did he score so many points? He was like not even drafted.
Yeah, he was like the top waiver claim like all the time in the league. So
and then he just went off with the Brewers.
Yeah, shout out to Carlos Santana. That guy's cool.
Big shout out.
We can talk about the White Sox actually signing somebody, except they didn't because it's a trade, and I'm stupid. I didn't read the whole thing. They traded Gregory Santos to the Mariners in exchange for Prelander Baroa, who was the number 15 prospect in the Seattle system. They traded for Zach DeLoach as well. He was the number 25 prospect in the Seattle system, and he was the 69th. Nice pick in the 2024 draft. Baroa is the 18th prospect in Chicago's system, and DeLoach will slot in at 21 for the White Sox.
Yes. Deloach was not the 69th pick, but they also received the 69th pick, the
Oh,
nicest pick in
sorry.
next year's
That's wrong.
draft. No worries. I forgot a parentheses. This trade is very interesting, and I think more so for the Mariners because Gregory Santos is just absolutely incredible. He's a former Giants prospect, landed with the White Sox in like just the most minor of trades, and now he's going to one of the best pitching development teams in baseball. And he's like imagine Brusdar Graterol, except if he struck out more batters.
Oof.
Yeah, so he throws 100 miles per hour, just incredible sinker. He throws a slider more often than he throws the sinker, and he's going to a Mariners team that just could turn him into an absolute beast. And I was really pumped for him to be on the White Sox because I thought he might be the closer, but they signed John Brebbia, and now Santos is out of the picture, so he's probably not going to be getting any saves this next year, which really tones down his fantasy upside in saves leagues, but in holds leagues, Santos is going to be super interesting. I think he's going to be absolutely dominant.
God, his numbers last year were gnarly. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
he is really good. But I think the White Sox got some interesting guys in Baroa and Deloach. I think Baroa was really interesting in spring training last year. He's got pretty solid numbers. It's nothing like super crazy, and he may be more of a reliever than a starter. But we saw last year at AA, 2.89 ERA, mostly as a reliever, and he struck out 36.5% of batters. So he was just a huge strikeout arm. He just walks too many guys. He's like a 14% walk rate. I doubt he returns back to the rotation, but this is a young guy with, I think, a ton of potential, just a huge fastball, upper 90s, and a very dominant slider as well. And then it looks like Deloach, who I've never heard of, is a second round pick from 2020. He played in AAA last year as a 24-year-old. He hit 23 home runs and stole 8 bases, batted 286. He walks a lot, but he strikes out a lot. That sounds like a quad A guy to me. But we'll see how that one works out. I think they're just sort of taking flyers on everyone, but maybe I think it depends what the White Sox do with that pick and also what they do with Baroa. Like if they make him a starter, they can definitely come out a winner on this. But if he's just like another reliever, it's like, why not just hold on to Santos?
Yeah. So seeing Santos's numbers, I like this trade a lot more for the Mariners. That guy's just nasty. 3.32 Sierra, 3.16 xERA, 3.31 xFIP, and a 2.65 FIP. And then he's probably going to end up striking out more guys because he's going to the Mariners, which is just stupid. Throws 99 miles an hour. I saw a clip too where he threw a 95 mile per hour slider or slutter or whatever you want to call it to Jeremy Pena. Jeremy Pena just looked at. I'm not going to repeat it. Yeah, that guy looks wild. I don't know. I don't really like this trade for the White Sox. I feel like it's tough to trust the White Sox because most things that they do are stupid. So yeah, not a big fan. Another trade that we can talk about, though, is another White Sox trade, and it is the Diamondbacks trading Dominic Fletcher to the White Sox in exchange for Christian Mena, who is the number 10 prospect in the Chicago White Sox system. He's the number 12 prospect in the Diamondback system now. The Diamondbacks just sort of have an outfield logjam, just sort of needing to deal someone, and Dominic Fletcher just happened to be the odd man out.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And Fletcher's actually pretty interesting. He's the brother of David Fletcher, and he is. He's had some pretty solid numbers. He's always been a huge average guy in the minor leagues. Has shown a little bit of power as well. I think he can be like a 15 to 20 home run guy. Pretty great plate discipline numbers as well. I feel like he just needed a chance, and he's going to be very solid wherever he goes. He just really did not have a role with the D-backs. They have just so many outfielders, but they wouldn't go away without getting anybody. And they got Christian Mena, who's I think pretty interesting. The guy reached AAA last year as a 20-year-old, despite not having good numbers. So there's either mismanagement here by the White Sox, which I won't put that past them, but also it could be telling of a guy that's more advanced than his numbers suggest. So if Mena's actually pretty good, then I think that's a great ad, because it's like the D-backs, if they're missing one thing, it's starting pitchers. And if Mena is a guy who could be in the majors as a 21, 22-year-old in the next couple of years and just be like solid, I think it's a great get. And clearly he's on the fast track to the majors. So we'll see how that one works out. I'd love to read more about Mena, but I think the one tweet I saw was, great get for the D-backs here.
Yeah, I agree. It's just it's hard to find anything about Mena right now because is so young. He just seems like a lottery ticket. But if he's a guy that the Diamondbacks can sort of develop, and they've sort of shown like, okay, maybe they have something with their pitching development as well. They've had a couple guys come up where it's been a mixed bag, but I don't know. I think they sort of needed to trade Fletcher. He was going to be blocked out for a long time. They just had nothing to really do with them. I don't really know. This is a sort of a wait and see sort of trade for them with Mena.
Yeah.
We can talk about our next one, which is definitely not a wait and see because we already know exactly what's going to happen with this one. And it's the Rays signing Phil Maton to a 1-year, $6.25 million deal. It has a 7 3/4 deal, so $7.75 million club option with a $250,000 buyout for 2025. Phil Maton was pretty good with the Astros, one of the best changeups in baseball. So that naturally means he's going to be one of the best relief pitchers in all of baseball because he's now signed by the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah, I love this deal. I thought maybe Maton could be a closer for like a rebuilding team and then get traded and really sort of bump up his value in free agency next year. But that's not the case, or at least the former is not the case. I really still think he could bump up his value in free agency next year a lot just by going to the Rays, and he could just be really incredible for them. He's been really underrated over the past couple of years. He's been very solid since going to the Astros. And like I said, very underrated, mostly because he's got so many great guys ahead of him in Houston that it was sort of hard for him to stand out, not getting a lot of holds. But going to Tampa, where it's like if he maintains the status quo, he's still very solid, a very interesting piece. But if the Rays help him take another level, and like you said, he becomes like a sub-2 ERA guy with a 35% strikeout rate, I would not be surprised. And that bullpen is always going to be dangerous no matter who's in it. But Fairbanks, Adam, Maton, and Poche is going to be very devastating for opposing batters. But yeah, I'm actually really pumped to see what Maton can do.
Yeah, I am too. I think that guy's just consistently been pretty solid. Last year was one of the best years of his career. It was like I think it was a 3 flat ERA or something like that. Yeah, 27% strikeout rate. He's just going to be really good in Tampa, and it's so predictable because they just get guys like this. So yeah, it's a really good move for the Rays and their pitching development. Unfortunately for a specific pitcher, he is being traded to a team that is not good at most anything. But it's the Giants trading Ross Stripling to the Oakland A's. So he gets to at least stay remotely close, just crossing the bay. He gets to go to the Oakland A's in exchange for Jonah Cox. And
nice.
Has to play for Oakland. Sorry, Ross. Sorry, Strip.
Yeah. The A's rotation is now 40% made up of 2023 Giants because they signed Alex Wood earlier as well. But this move combined with the Mitch Haniger move and some rumors swirling about Michael Conforto possibly being on the move just shows how awful their offseason was last year. They literally had Haniger and Stripling for 1 year and we're just like, we got it. This was bad idea. Get out of this. And it's just like, we knew that. And it's just like, after they missed out on Aaron Judge, they just splurged and it just did not go well. So that sort of gives me a little pause with the Jung-Hoo Lee signing as well. Cause it's like, well, if you're so, just acting with so much stress after missing out on Ohtani that they just give a bunch of money to anybody. I don't know. It just really weird trades. This is not going to make a difference for the A's. It takes the workload off their young starters. And the Giants get like a future utility guy. He's a 21-year-old who was in A-ball last year and had a 92 WRC plus, struck out 33% of the time. So not sure what they're doing there in terms of the Giants. It looks like it was just a total just salary dump, which if they do this and then don't get anybody else, I'm like, it's just over. They're so bad because it's like the rotation already was bad or wasn't great. And now they've lost Alex Wood, gotten rid of Ross Stripling, and and just have all this money that they're not going to spend on anybody. Like, sure, go get Blake Snell, which I wouldn't feel confident about, rather than get like Jordan Montgomery. But I feel like they're like freeing up this money to go get like Michael Lorenzen or something, which he's very solid, but not like the number
That's like
two on your staff.
Right. It's such a weird lateral. It's like not a lateral move, but it's not like
It's the
an
same
up.
guy.
It's like this. Where it just
Yeah.
goes like
But it's
barely
like
up.
your number two
You're not
right
moving the
now is like
needle.
Kyle Harrison, and then you have Jordan Hicks, and then just like a bunch of young guys. Like,
So many question marks around that
yeah,
rotation, and you're just
which is
getting rid of normal guys,
terrible.
and they're not going to sign anyone of like major consequence. It's just such a weird sort of move.
I'd love
But
them
Strickland
to.
was bad, so it's like, okay, you're getting rid of a guy that sucked, but you're not adding anyone that replaces anything.
Yeah, they
It's
need
just so
to
many
make
question marks.
another addition to the rotation, and also their offense is terrible and their defense is bad. It's like, what, like we got to do something, and then it's
At least
like
your
all the rumors
ballpark's
right
really
now.
cool.
Yeah, sure. All the rumors right now are surrounding Jorge Soler, and I just think that makes no sense. Like, obviously, yeah,
Doesn't.
you want a guy
It doesn't at all.
who can improve the offense any way you can,
And
but
you
a
can't
guy
really
that's
play the field.
defensively exactly, he's defensively limited. He's going to have to like lock down that DH role, and that either moves Wilmer Flores to third base or Lamont Wade Jr. into the outfield, which makes the defense even worse than it already was when it was one of the worst in baseball last year. So it's like, yeah, go get Matt Chapman and go get Jordan Montgomery. And if you don't do both of those, it's all going to look like a really stupid offseason to just go get Jung-Hoo Lee and just call it a day.
They need to get Matt Chapman. They need to get Jordan Montgomery, and they need to get Brandon Belt instead of Jorge Soler. Just let
That's
Brandon
right.
Belt play first or
Trade
DH.
for Willie Adames.
Willie Adames would be a great trade.
Yeah, I just like
because I don't think Luciano is probably ready. He probably needs a little more time in the minors to.
I think he's ready, but it's like it wouldn't hurt just to have like an extra guy there. But right now their offense sucks and the rotation is worse. So
yeah, not looking.
And they have the money is the thing. They have the money and the prospect capital. They can do it.
Yeah, I feel like they're just sort of like panicking, right? Well, I feel like they're panicking by trying not to panic like last season because they didn't get any of the big guys, if that makes sense. It's like, well,
but they already did that. It's like they went out and got Jung-Hoo Lee because they panicked after Ohtani signed.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like last year they spent all the money on everyone after they did.
Well, wouldn't you rather it be on 3 guys that suck than 1 guy that sucks?
Well, like, I don't know. It's such a weird situation to even sort of try to wrap your head around.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Next trade, not very confusing, is Caleb Ferguson being traded to the Yankees, who the Dodgers appear to be just going with one lefty in their bullpen. They traded Caleb Ferguson to the Yankees, who finally find their Wandy Peralta replacement. Didn't take that long in exchange for Matt Gage and Christian Zazueta.
Yeah, I feel like it's not worth it to go over the minor leaguers because this is such a minor deal. Matt Gage is literally like 30 years old. And I think Zazueta is very young, but Ferguson is pretty underrated. 26% strikeout rate last year, mid-3s ERA. I think he's very solid. And the top lefty in New York was Victor Gonzalez, also a former Dodger. And they could always use a lot of bullpen depth because they just love getting injured in New York.
Their bullpen guys always get hurt.
It's not even their bullpen guys; it's the whole team.
That's true.
Either way, I think just adding any sort of depth is great.
Arms got hurt last year, though.
Yeah, and then I think Caleb Ferguson's solid lefty just to have there. It's not going to be anybody that's going to be super incredible or something, but a mid-3s ERA guy with a 25% strikeout rate fits anywhere, I think.
Definitely so. The Dodgers then replaced Caleb Ferguson by re-signing Ryan Brazier to a 2-year, $9 million deal. It's got $4 million worth of incentives baked in there. Another guy we talked about, Phil Maton, being pretty underrated. Ryan Brazier fits that mold too.
Bro, like this signing is crazy. The guy's going to be 36 and 37 across these 2 years, and he got a multi-year deal, which is by itself crazy. He pitched for the Red Sox last year for the first 21 innings of his season. There he had a 7.29 ERA. Have you looked at yet what his Dodgers numbers were?
Not Dodgers specific, no.
All right.
I can see
in 38.2 innings with the Dodgers, what do you think his ERA was?
What?
Take one guess.
So I'm going to go sub 1. Let's go 0.82.
0.70 in 38, nearly 40 innings. which is incredibly lucky, 3.47 xFIP. Either way, that's crazy. And it's crazy that he went from a guy that had a near 6 ERA in 2022 to a guy that's signing a multi-year deal in his mid to late 30s.
That's crazy, man.
Absolutely wild.
Absolutely
And he's
insane.
just going to
Oh
be
my
like a
God.
middle reliever there. Like he's going to be like their fifth or sixth best reliever.
He got DFA'd by the Red Sox.
And then
the Red
turn it
Sox
into a
first.
2-year deal. He's
2.48
pretty crazy.
BIP is wild. That's just disgusting, man.
Yeah. Pretty awesome.
Yep. Shame it's for the Dodgers.
Yep.
Another move we talk about that the Dodgers made is re-signing Clayton Kershaw. It's a 1-year deal, player option for 2025. The financials of this are currently unknown. We talked about the Altuve thing. It'd be weird to see one random team right at the end for Altuve. It feels like it's inevitable, but hopefully not. But the Dodgers, it would be weird to see Clayton Kershaw in anything but the LA Dodgers uniform.
Yeah, he's just going to keep signing these 1-year deals with the player option. But now they went from a team that looked to be relying really heavily on young starting pitching to having just a super, super deep rotation. Like now that they have Kershaw, it's Kershaw, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Bobby Miller, and James Paxton. Kershaw will be out for the first couple of months after undergoing surgery. So Emmett Sheehan will be in there, but it's not like that's all they got. They also have Michael Grove, Gavin Stone, Landon Knack, Kyle Hurt, just a ton of young guys. And that doesn't even count Walker Buehler and Dustin May, who should return at some point. The amount of depth they have in the rotation right now is crazy. And this is a team that we're talking about, like their lineup having Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Shohei Ohtani as the top 3. This is about as close to a super team as we will ever see.
There's a chance that if they have a playoff game, he just doesn't start, even if everyone's around. There's a
right?
chance.
Why would you take that risk?
There's genuinely a chance. Like, whereas if you get a playoff game with Clayton Kershaw, you just don't start him, and he just comes out of the bullpen.
He's so bad in the playoffs. Yeah. They just have so many good guys. I mean, Glasnow sucks in the playoffs too. You don't even have to start him. Just start Yamamoto, Miller, and Walker Buehler, and you're all set.
That's
so crazy how many guys they have. And then considering next year, it's like, oh man, they're going to lose Walker Buehler next year and maybe Clayton Kershaw retires. Oh, no worries. Shohei Ohtani will be back on the mound.
Mm-hmm. And then Clayton Kershaw gets to walk in the Hall of Fame after he gets his 3,000th strikeout this year. It's a fairy tale sort of thing. I'm cool with this move.
It's ridiculous just how loaded this team is. And I'm going to be just so happy when they lose in the playoffs.
Oh yeah. They're going to get washed by the 84 win Miami Marlins or something stupid. The Mets are going to sneak in.
They're not making the playoffs.
The Mets are going to sneak in with 83 wins, and they're going to beat the Dodgers. No,
it's going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates and the power of friendship.
That would be the best thing that has ever happened to me.
Yeah.
David Bednar striking out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mookie Betts.
And then he goes and he like stabs all the players on the Dodgers, but they all live and they're okay.
And David Bednar strikes out the side to close out the series, and then pulls out a beer out of his back pocket that he just had the whole time and just
shotguns.
Yeah, that would be the best.
They're just like, what is that in his back pocket? It does not look like something he's allowed to have.
pulls out a tall boy, Keystone Light, and shotguns it.
He's got his keys on him too. He's got his keys on him too, and they're just like, "Wait, what?"
In his other pocket. Why does he have those?
The umpires are just like, "How did he get that by us? We patted him down."
My favorite thing in baseball of the last few years still has been them celebrating him getting his one All-Star appearance, or his first All-Star appearance, by literally giving him a 24-pack of like really garbage beer while Renegade's playing in the background. It's the most Pittsburgh thing that's ever existed, and it just fits David Bednar to a T. Yeah, that would be the funniest thing that's ever happened. We can talk about David Bednar's division mate, new division mate, Jacob Junis, who signed with the Brewers on a 1-year, $4 million deal. It has a $3 million buyout on a mutual option for 2025. Jacob Junis is a guy that throws baseballs, and he's done it for a couple teams and been pretty average for the last few years.
I mean, after losing Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns, like that rotation was looking pretty bad. Yeah, so adding anybody's great. Jacob Junis has got a great slider. He's not going to throw a lot of innings. He's projected for 130. I feel like he could be pretty solid. He's been pretty solid in a swingman role for the Giants over the past couple of years. I've grown to like him. So I think he'll fit fine with this team. It works well, gets Joe Ross out of the projected 5-man rotation, but right now it's not looking too great for them. But hey, they made another signing to make up for it.
You know what 2 guys didn't give up 3 home runs in the playoffs last year? Joe Ross and
Anybody on the
Jacob Junis.
Giants? That's
Yeah,
right.
Joe Ross and Jacob Junis.
They were both on the Giants.
Corbin Burns bum ass did.
Joe Ross was on the Giants.
Was he really?
Yes, he was.
Who remembers that guy? Jacob Junis got a good slider. That's about all I really know about him. His new slider is pretty good last year. Well, it's not new, but he kind of retooled it to like a sweepery sort of slider. So I don't know. It had pretty good whiff rate. The Brewers will somehow turn him into a stud, which is going to be really annoying. Move on. No more Jacob Junis talk. We can talk about the Brewers signing the GOAT, Gary Sanchez, to a 1-year, $7 million deal. Also mutual option for 2025. Gary Sanchez, kind of a disrespected player, but he was really good last year. And everyone sort of was like, oh, yeah, anyway, and never really talked about it. Gary Sanchez was very productive last year and sort of feels like that was sort of just pushed to the side and ignored. He was a good catcher last year. Posted almost 2 WAR, 111 WRC plus, much better defensive numbers than we've seen from him in the past because he has sort of been dogged for being a terrible defensive catcher. He was good last year.
Yeah, and he was the guy who made Blake Snell just incredible in the second half and most of the year. So yeah, it was you can really and imagine him going to the Brewers where not only are they good at pitcher development, but they're really good at catcher defense, which we've seen with William Contreras. We've seen with guys like Victor Caratini and other catchers that have played for that team. So I think Gary Sanchez could be even better. Does this give them a leg up on Blake Snell? I'm sure it would if they would ever shell out that kind of money. They won't.
No, absolutely.
But it does make one of the better catching tandems in all of baseball. I think Gary Sanchez and William Contreras are top 3. I think the Darnaud Sean Murphy pairing is better than Sanchez William Contreras, but it's very close. There are some other interesting ones. I was talking about this with our former fantasy league mate Troy Leaf. I like the Yainer Diaz, Victor Caratini in Houston, and I also think Salvador Perez, Freddie Fermin in Kansas City is pretty underrated. But yeah, I think these are the top 2, the Brewers and the Braves.
Definitely so. That is our last offseason transaction to talk about. No closer tonight. We've gone for almost 2 hours. It's almost 11 p.m. Eastern time. So it is time to end the podcast, but not before we plug our socials. You can follow me on my Twitter account at TVSBird. My name's Davis Bird. I post a bunch of stuff on there, different baseball things. I posted a Blake Snell tweet. Go like that one. It has like 17 views. Jake talked about his 200 views. Look at Mr. Big Time over here. You can follow Mr. Big Time over here on his Twitter at Jake Crumpler and read all the stuff he writes for the plethora of sites. I keep saying like multitude. Let's go with plethora today. Plethora of sites for job. Mr. Crumpler.
Yeah. Pitcherlist.com. It's rankings week right now. So we got all our rankings coming out. Projections
the new
should be coming out soon as well. Yep. Just had our closer rankings come out. But yeah, this is when things really start to pick up in fantasy baseball. So definitely go check out all the content there. It's going to be really awesome. I am writing plenty of articles this month and also writing for Baseball HQ, Playing Time Analysis. Go check them out. They just transitioned to a new website. So it's a brand new and sparkly, and they've got some great paid content there. So go check that out as well. But you can actually find all of my work at crumplerbaseball.com.
Definitely. So you can also check out the site that sponsors us on Twitter at AthleteSub. It is theathletesub.org if you want to go check out their stuff on the website. New stuff should be rolling out soon. I don't think we have much out as of recently, but new stuff is supposed to be in the works. Check them out. They do us a favor by letting us, do this. So we really, really appreciate it. But that's all we have for now. Check back in with us next Wednesday, maybe. We'll see. Peace.